I left and had an opportunity in Palm Bay to work with another attorney for about 10 months. It didn't work out. And I remember coming home and telling my wife at the time, I said, I think I'm going to leave and open my own shop. We had just taken out a second mortgage. We had a little house in Suntree. We took out a second mortgage to build a swimming pool. And I remember telling her, we're going to put those plans on hold. I may need that second mortgage because I don't know, what my next paycheck is going to come from. And I opened up a little shop in Palm Bay, never looked back. It all happened the way it was supposed to. I rented for about 2.5 years, and the next thing I knew, I found myself buying a piece of property. The piece of property where the law office is now on Palm Bay Road. When I bought that piece of property, there was nothing west of Babcock Street. I mean, Chili's was on the corner, but there was nothing to the west of Babcock Street.
Really?
The I-95 interchange wasn't there, and people said, "You're nuts. You are crazy buying land west of Babcock Street." But I did it, and what's happened there now is
Yeah, they're not
insane.
saying that you're nuts anymore.
No, I'm not crazy anymore.
Welcome to the Legacy Angel Network Venture Lounge, where nothing ventured is nothing changed. For Matt Helmentaler, press 1. For member services, press 2. For real raw startup stories, press 3. For all other questions or concerns, please wait on the line in our
Good evening, everyone. I'm Matt Helmentaler, and you're listening to Venture Lounge, after-hour conversations with founders and investors. These are the stories, insights, and conversations that you aren't going to find on the company website. Because the real lessons you learn in the startup world, the risks you take as an entrepreneur, the highs and the lows, the moments in your journey when no one else believes in you right before you break through. Those are the moments that you just have to hear for yourself. So grab a drink and listen in to the men and women who are changing the world. Welcome to the Venture Lounge.
Welcome back to Venture Lounge, everybody. Nothing ventured, nothing changed. I'm Connor Sherman, creative director here at Legacy Angel Network, and I'm joined today by our founder and co-host, Matt Helmentaler. What's up, my man?
Hola,
Cheers.
¿cómo está? How you doing, man?
Good. Who's on the couch with us?
See, look, I should have turned my phone off. I'm gonna take this watch
Brilliant
off, 'cause then
timing.
it won't. That's yep. I almost wore my other watch today because I was like, I might get a call during the,
And you did.
I did. Yeah. That was my accountant too. She's gonna hate that I just put her to voicemail. So, to my right here is my dear friend John Alpizar. John Alpizar and I, we go a few years back in the way of like actually meeting each other and all that fun stuff. But I grew up with his son David.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I mean we weren't like in Pampers together, but elementary school, junior high, high school, all that fun stuff, and we were kind of some rugrats together, and. But John, I want to talk about him a little bit. He's got a great reputation in our community. As our followers, listeners, everyone that watches this knows, we like bringing in people who have like legacy value, who have brought something to their community, a community where they've thought, what am I leaving behind? What am I? And this guy has just kind of walked that out privately and publicly. So I want to read some stuff. I stole this from the guys from the JA thing. I said, I need you to send me that. So I'm gonna read some of this because I just think I should. So
And welcome, John. Nice to meet you.
Thank
man,
you
by the
so
way.
much. Yeah, nice meeting you.
all right. So John is an attorney and member of Alpizar Law, which you founded.
That's true.
Yeah, in Palm Bay, Florida. He's practiced law in Central Florida for 44 years with a focus on Brevard, Indian River, St. Lucie, Orange counties. John has had an excess of $150 million plus settlements and verdicts, and is a member of the multi-million-dollar Advocate Forum. Born in Key West, Florida, his parents were immigrants from Cuba. John went and got his BA from Bethany College in West Virginia in 1975 with honors and distinction, and his JD from Capital University Law School in Columbus, Ohio in 1978. See, look at that. Ohio. You guys have
It's
that in
the
common.
Ohio connection.
Yeah,
there it
man, I
is.
like that.
He's a member of the Florida Bar since 1978 till present, and the U.S. District Court, Middle District of Florida, U.S. Court of Appeals, 11th Circuit, and the Brevard Bar Association. Past president of Brevard Bar Association, John has served on the Florida Bar Board of Governors representing the 18th Judicial Circuit from 2012 to 2018, and is the past president of Central Florida chapter of the American Board of Trial Advocacy, ABOTA. John was the founding director of the Security National Bank and served as the director of Florida Business. It just goes on. The dude has just like done so many freaking cool ventures in his life. And another thing that he started was a turkey giveaway. He's been doing that for what, the last 10 years? 12 years?
Almost 10 years.
Almost
until
10
COVID,
years.
and then
Yeah.
we got interrupted. But
Yeah, there's a over in Palm Bay. He gives out these turkeys every year, hundreds of turkeys to families that need a Thanksgiving meal, and but they've been serving this community for so many freaking great years, and he's an awesome guy. So I thought would be a great guy to come and to chill with us at the Venture Lounge.
Well, cheers, John.
thank you. With that introduction, I'm a little nervous to be here.
You're our first lawyer on the podcast.
Oh,
too.
my God.
Fastest growing Palm
Maybe the
Bay
last.
adjacent podcast as well.
Maybe. No, I think we'll be okay.
Well, John, you got to tell us, man, what's made Brevard the place to stay? I mean, you have some staying power here. You've been in the community for a long time, so why this place?
You know, I came here not by accident, but my wife at the time's parents had retired here. My ex-wife's father had been in the Navy for 30 years. He retired as a captain, and they retired here to Merritt Island. And I was in law school in Ohio, and after 4 winters in West Virginia and 3 winters in Ohio, I was ready to come back to Florida since I was originally from Florida. And we settled here. This was one of the spots we picked, and I was lucky enough to be offered a job with a really good law firm in Cocoa. And so that's how Brevard became home. I didn't think that I would be here for 44 years, but that's how long it's been at this point.
What was it like growing up in Key West? That sounds awesome.
Everybody says that.
So I definitely have to hear why it is and isn't.
Well, first you have to understand that the Key West I grew up in is a completely different Key West than the Key West that's there now. You know, when I was a kid in Key West growing up, it was fishing, it was beach, it was boating, it was fun and sun, and there was a tourist trade, but it wasn't a T-shirt shop on every street corner. Right. There weren't cruise ships coming in by the dozen. So it was a much more laid-back environment, place to grow up. I'd disappear on my bicycle all day, and my parents wouldn't worry about where I was. Awesome. And I'd come home in time for dinner, and I knew when I had to be home, and it's not quite that way now.
No.
But it was a great place to grow up. But it was also a very isolated place, and I think, like most people, I couldn't wait to get out because I thought there was something better somewhere else. So
your family's from Cuba? Is that what
yeah,
I thought?
my father, my grandfather was from Cuba, and he came to the United States in the early 1900s, and actually worked for the Cuban consulate office in Key West, and he lived in other cities. So he was kind of a pioneer for our family. My father came from Cuba in 1948, and my mother came in 1950, and they were married in Key West in 1950. I always like telling the story when somebody asks me about my parents. My father landed in Key West with 13 cents in his pocket. Wow. And when he passed away, I had a dear friend that gave me a picture of him, that's framed with 13 cents on the
Oh,
bottom.
wow, wow.
And it means a lot because it reminds me that they came from nothing, as I came from nothing. And I think that's something that kind of keeps me going.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's powerful. I mean, what? Talk about legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, I thought we were going to do this interview in Spanish because
You'd be the only one talking.
Yeah.
Are you fluent?
that's my first language.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
when I was born,
No.
when I was born, my folks didn't speak English, so I spoke exclusively Spanish until I started kindergarten,
Wow.
and I learned English in kindergarten and beyond. So yeah, I speak both languages fluently.
Oh wow.
Most people don't know that, but
No, I got a sense of it the other night when we were at the JA event, and I'm like, oh, well, of course he does.
yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So you feel like what kind of like culture traditions did your family bring? You don't know, like your family being from Cuba. I guess what kind of values and things do you feel like where you're from influenced your family's values, how you looked at the world, how they raised you, like?
Wow. I think the biggest thing when I think back, it's taken me a long time to realize this because I get asked a lot of times, why did you leave Key West and what prompted you to leave and go to West Virginia of all places? That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But
I got some family from there.
yeah, well, but it was a dramatic
bless
thing to go from Key West to West Virginia.
Oh,
But
100%.
but I think what I've come to realize as I've gotten older is that the same thing that drove my father to leave his family and leave Cuba and come to another country is probably what drove me to do what I did when I left Key West. I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't know why I wanted to leave so badly, but I think it was this sense of wanting to do better, wanting to be able to accomplish more, wanting to make things better for my family, and trying to leave more behind than what I started with.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest value that I can think of from that whole experience. Aside from the normal things, and my parents were, they didn't have a lot. My mom worked in a department store for most of the time that I was a kid. My father worked 2 jobs most of the time. He worked in a laundry as a presser. He pressed at one place during the day, and then he'd go somewhere else and press at night, pressing clothes and big machines. And so I think this sense of hard work, that's another value that I think I got from them. I've never been afraid of hard work. And so I've tried to convert all that many times without even knowing I was doing it. But that's what I've tried to implement in my life as I've gone through my career, and it's worked.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, when you were in the middle of figuring out kind of like your next steps, you knew that man, I'm here, I'm in Key West, great, this is awesome, but I wanna go, I wanna venture out. And what made you decide that I want to jump into law? Like, was there something like a moment, or did it just seem to kind of fit with? Like, was there like a sense of like justice that you have, or was like that, what was it in you that drove you toward law more than anything else?
Actually, it had nothing to do with being a lawyer. I originally wanted to be an FBI agent.
Oh wow.
That was what I wanted to do, and it came from, I went to Catholic school for 12 years in Key West, and when I was in 9th grade, we had a nun who, before she became a nun, had worked as a fingerprint analyst for the FBI.
Wow.
And
Wow.
It's a scary nun, man.
yeah, it was really scary. Sister Richard Lawrence, I'll never forget her.
Man.
She brought in FBI agents on career day, and was always talking about her experience before she became a nun, and that stuck with me. And at the time, in order to become an FBI agent, you either had to have a law degree or you had to be a CPA. Every agent had to do. It's not that way anymore. Now it's a lot easier to become an agent. So when I was first, enrolled in college and thinking about law school, the thought in the back of my head was, well, I'll get my law degree and I'll get to apply to the FBI and go to the FBI Academy, and that's what I wanted to do until I got to law school, and then during law school, clerked for a law firm, and that just changed my mind completely.
And where at in Ohio again did you?
Columbus.
Oh, excellent. So you're at Ohio State Law.
No, Capital University.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting. They came to Bethany College when I was there and interviewed, and on the basis of the interview, I think is why I got admitted, because my grades were awesome, but my scores on the LSATs were not great, and I tried to get into Florida, and that didn't happen. So Capital became the spot, and it was great. I got a great legal education. I had great experiences clerking with a law firm there. I was law review. I did all this stuff that maybe I wouldn't have been able to do at a different school. So.
Yeah, but my uncle went through law at Ohio State, and then my younger sister's going through law right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's
At Ohio State also?
Yeah,
Yeah.
But Capital's still very prominent, and Columbus is growing like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We used to do a lot of, the library at Ohio State was much nicer, bigger, and quieter. So I used to sneak over there, and my wife at the time worked at the university.
That's
so
cool.
I spent a lot of time at that in Columbus.
Tom Sherman, does that ring a bell? I don't know if it would have been at the same time.
No.
Vern Rife, was he a big name at the time? You familiar? He was clerk of the house in the.
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah. Anyway,
I just remember all the bars on High Street.
Right. My uncles do too, I'm sure. That's funny.
awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, how did that experience develop, John? From law school, what were your first steps? I know you mentioned West Virginia. What was your time there like?
My time in West Virginia was awesome. I think I probably grew up and matured in West Virginia. It was the first time I had gone away from home. I went to West Virginia to this small college. At the time, that college was probably at the height of its enrollment, maybe 1,500 students.
Oh, wow.
And for me, it was great because the Catholic high school that I went to in Key West had 300 students from 7th grade to 12th grade. There was a public high school in Key West as well that probably had, 1,300 kids or more. But I was used to that small school atmosphere. So Bethany College was perfect for me. But I was like I was totally out of my element when I went to West Virginia. I'd never lived away from home. I'd never lived away from my parents. I'd never seen snow. In fact, you're going to laugh at this, but when I transferred into West Virginia to Bethany after one semester at a community college in Key West, which is what I did after high school. My parents were not college graduates. In fact, they weren't even high school graduates. No one in my family ever graduated from high school before me. No one in my family ever went to college, and clearly no one ever went to professional school. So I didn't have a lot of guidance at home, not because my parents didn't care or didn't want to, but I just don't think they knew better.
Right.
And so I graduated from high school, and the logical thing was to go to the community college there, and I did for a semester, and it was literally like still being in high school. I mean, we were still doing stupid high school stuff in college, and though I go off to West Virginia, and it's time to grow up. But I got sidetracked. As I'm flying into West Virginia, there were 3 other fellas from Key West that were going to school there. 2 of them were playing football and had started there, and 1 other was transferring in at the same time I was. And as we're on approach into Pittsburgh, which is where you had to land to get to West Virginia, I'm looking out the window, and I'm seeing all this white. And the natural thing out of my mouth to my friends was, look at all the sand down there, because that's all I'd ever seen. And they started laughing. It was a joke, but it was true. I'd never seen snow, and I landed in Pittsburgh, and there was probably a foot and a half of snow on the ground, and I'm here with leather shoes on, slipping and sliding on the sidewalk, and it was a cultural experience
That's
for me.
funny, man.
Yeah.
How'd you make your way out of law school, John? What did that look like? First business moves, opportunities that you saw. How'd you make your way?
Yeah, I started to say this before. I grew up as a person, I think, in college. I reached a point where my start in college was a little rocky. My first time away from home was a little rocky. I wasn't doing real well in school. And I remember having a conversation with the dean, who I ended up becoming very, very good friends with. And he sat me down in his office one day. He says, "John, I got to tell you, I think we've made a mistake letting you come into Bethany College. You need to clean up your act, or you may not be here next semester." And that scared the hell out of me, because I knew that meant going back to Key West. And not that that was the end of the world, but I had been back to Key West enough times in the summer to see what had happened to a lot of the friends that I grew up with. Unfortunately, many of them were in jail. They got into drug trade and importing, exporting, and I didn't want it. I didn't want that. So it scared me, and I got serious about school. I got serious about getting involved in my future. I became Chief Justice of Student Court, Vice President of Fraternity Council. I actually got involved and started working hard to get good grades, and that obviously led to me being able to get into law school. I was focused in law school. I mean, all I did was work, study, get good grades, work, because I needed the income. Yeah. I made it through college with every grant that I could get my hands on, every student loan that I can get my hands on. I didn't really worry about how I was going to pay them back at the time. And now in hindsight, 2% interest rate wasn't so bad.
No, not at all.
But, and I did the same with law school. And at the time I was married, so I had to worry about that. But I did well in law school, and got offered originally a clerkship in Cocoa with a firm in the summer between my second and third year of law school. And that's really what originally brought me to Cocoa. And after clerking with them for the summer, at the end of the summer, they offered me a job upon graduation, which I didn't accept originally. I was still looking around and interviewing with other law firms, but eventually I accepted that, and that's what actually brought me to this area.
Wow. I had to say, I have a lot of respect for the dean that, I don't think I'm overstating when I say this. I don't think I am. I wasn't there, clearly. I wasn't born yet. Sorry. Didn't mean to point that out. But in my life, when people have pulled me aside and have said those types of things to me, looking back, it's because I know that A, they cared, and B, they saw something in me. And I think that that's pretty cool. I think, in my opinion, I think that guy saw something in you.
Yeah, I've had that experience, unfortunately, more times than I want to remember.
Yep.
Where somebody sat me down and
same
said
here.
something.
Yeah.
The nun that I mentioned before, Sister Richard Lawrence, I remember getting into some trouble when I was in high school, and her taking me for a walk one day and sat me down and I still remember her words. She said, you're at a see that crack in the sidewalk, and it goes that way and it goes that way. Mm-hmm. I said, yeah. She says, you're at the right where the crack is and where the two roads go, and you can choose to go right or you can choose to go left. If you go right, life's going to be really difficult for you. If you go the other way, maybe things will be better. I didn't have a clue what she was talking about at the time.
Yeah.
But, as you get older and you mature, you think about those events and you go, God, people were really, obviously they saw something in me that I didn't see at the time. And they were trying to to help and guide me along the way. Sometimes I listened, sometimes I didn't. And I wish I had listened more now, maybe, because things would have clicked maybe sooner.
Yeah.
But it's, you can't go back and change that. So,
Yeah. I love, like I can think about my own life. And at the time, again, like you said, you don't always realize what's happening. And then, but you look back and you think about your life and you think about, like, what brought you to where you are. And you remember in these moments, these pivotal moments, these pivotal conversations, and the things that really help steer you. And and then you come to appreciate those difficult conversations, those moments where someone cared enough to sit down and have the conversation.
yeah. And they took the time to do it, which,
Yeah.
not all of us do all the time.
Yeah.
Everybody's so busy and life's kind of buzzing by now.
Yeah.
And I think, we should all take the time to try to help other people. If we see a problem and we recognize a talent, we ought to do something about it.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree.
Yeah, very mutually beneficial to take that time to like invest in somebody else.
Sure.
I mean, it usually is. So you mentioned like eventually it like at one point it wasn't clicking yet what your path was in life and profession. So when do you feel like it started to click? Like early days in your career out of law school, can you remember your first opportunities, cases, those kind of things? Anything memorable there?
What clicked for me, and again, I didn't realize it at the time, but in looking back, is my second year in law school, I was offered a clerking position with a law firm in Columbus. And the firm specialized in personal injury work. They did criminal work and they did personal injury work. I'd never been exposed to that. I knew pretty much immediately that I didn't want to do criminal defense work. It just didn't appeal to me. But I was intrigued with the personal injury from the start because I was intrigued by the law part of it, and I was intrigued by the medicine part of it. And doing personal injury work allowed me to not only develop my talent as a lawyer, but it also allowed me to explore the medicine and learn. I'm not a doctor, but I understand, because of the amount of work that we do involving personal injury, I understand a lot of at least the medicine that applies to my area. So that law firm gave me that opportunity, and I think without realizing it at the time, that's in part what dictated the kinds of law firms that I eventually started looking at to try to get a job. And the law firm in Cocoa that I ended up starting with did that. They did personal injury, workers' compensation. They did other things too, but they did that predominantly. And that's what attracted me to them. And after clerking with them for a summer, I knew that's what I wanted to do when I got out. So that's what kind of drove me in the direction that I ultimately went.
It's while you're telling this story, the word that keeps popping up into my brain is venture. Like you have just ventured your whole life. I mean, you really have. You've taken steps that other people before you. Now, granted, your parents took those venturing steps, right? That
Right.
kind of like that influenced you, and they did something maybe their family had not really. And then you ventured, and you continued to venture. You go from this state to that state, and you get married, and you're doing this, and you're like, well, I need to do, and you start to move, and you start to go and move and go, and then you venture over here. You get over here to Cocoa Beach. You start your career, and then at one point you decide, I'm gonna open my own
It's another venture.
Another
It's a whole other
venture.
story, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like, so kudos for the faith and belief in yourself, and and for those that supported you as well. But like, what was that like? Stepping from a place where you had some structure, you kind of could probably predict a little bit what was going on from day to day, to starting your own thing. Like, what was the
transition?
Yeah.
Well, I'm in Cocoa. I'm working. Was working with three marvelous lawyers, mentors to me. Two of them ended up becoming judges. They're all passed away now. And they were all very active in the Bar Association. Two of them had been presidents of the Bar Association. One of them had been on the Board of Governors of the Florida Bar. So I got a lot of my early push to giving back and service to the profession from those guys. But things happened very quickly there. I was with them a total of 3.5 years. After 3 years, they offered me a partnership, which was unheard of, because these guys were all well established, had been in the community for a long time. I accepted it. And once I became a partner and started seeing the books and seeing what was coming in and what was going out and how things were running, I just had a feeling that wasn't for me, that I wanted to do something different. I wasn't sure what that was, but I just didn't feel like, I was in my 20s then, and and these guys were maybe in their late 40s. At the time, they seemed old to me. They didn't seem that old anymore.
Is that, I know you're in your 20s. Do you look at me and see
Ancient, man.
Well, wait till you get to my age. But I just, that was the analysis, right or wrong, that I went through was, is that where I want to be when I get to that point? Which, at the time, 20, 25 years in the future seemed like an eternity. But so I did, and I left and had an opportunity in Palm Bay to work with another attorney for about 10 months. It didn't work out. And I remember coming home and telling my wife at the time, I said, I think I'm going to leave and open my own shop. And she kind of looked at me. I mean, we had just taken out a second mortgage. We had a little house in Suntree. We took out a second mortgage to build a swimming pool. And I remember telling her, we got to put those plans on hold. I may need that second mortgage because I don't know, what my next paycheck is going to come from. And I opened up a little shop in Palm Bay and never looked back. It all happened the way it was supposed to. I rented for about 2.5 years, and the next thing I knew, I found myself buying a piece of property. This is funny. I bought the piece of property where the law office is now on Palm Bay Road, west of Babcock Street. When I bought that piece of property, there was nothing west of Babcock Street. I mean, Chili's was on the corner, but there was nothing to the west of Babcock Street.
Really?
The I-95 interchange wasn't there. It was 2 lanes, not what it is now.
Oh, wow.
And people said, you're nuts. You are crazy buying land west of Babcock Street. But I did it, and what's happened there now is just
they're not
insane.
saying that you're nuts anymore.
No, I'm not crazy anymore.
Yeah.
But
By the way, beautiful office.
thank you.
Like I've had the opportunity to be on the right side of sitting in that office, and
There's no wrong side.
so far, okay, all right, good. There's no wrong. Okay, so, but yeah, absolutely exquisite. I mean, just beautiful.
Thanks.
Beautiful
Yeah.
office.
So we, that happened, and built the office. I think we moved into that building in 1986. And the firm's grown, and I've had lawyers, and lawyers have come, and lawyers have gone. It's very common in the law business. It's hard for lawyers to stay together for a variety of reasons. But we flourished in Palm Bay, and I mean, when I first went to Palm Bay, I think I was the 4th lawyer in Palm Bay.
Oh wow.
And that was probably in 1982, 83.
Wow.
There still aren't really very many lawyers in Palm Bay. But it's been good. It's been good to me, and I've tried to give back to the Palm Bay community as much as I can because of it.
Yeah, and that's clear and that's obvious. I mean, like it's so we raised our kids in Palm Bay. We live in Rockledge now, but we raised our kids in Palm Bay, and my wife grew up in Palm Bay. Like, so there's this one street in Palm Bay, School Drive. Her papa had essentially, when all of his kids were off getting married, he owned all this property, so he would give them each a lot after they got married, and he would help them build a house. So she grew up with all of her aunts and uncles and cousins
Oh, wow.
on this one street in Palm Bay, only about 3 or 4 minutes from your office there. And I remember talking to Papa Earl while he was still around, and he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, Alpizar Law has been there for for years." So, but you've been a staple and kind of an anchor, I would say, in that community for years now.
Well, it's weird. When I first started in Palm Bay, um, people didn't want to see professionals in Palm Bay. They felt like they had to go to Melbourne for everything, for your doctor, your lawyer, your accountant, whatever. And that was a battle at the beginning, saying, you can get good, competent everything right here in Palm Bay. You don't have to go to Melbourne. You don't have to go to Vero. And I think it's better now. I think things have grown. So
Yeah.
Google's
awesome.
at like 119,000 people. Is it bigger now, or is it about the size? Do you guys know?
Palm Bay,
Palm,
I would say it's bigger than that now.
Yeah. I
so
would
it's
think so.
2020, I think.
Yeah, I would think it's definitely bigger than that now, but it's the biggest city in Brevard.
Landmass wise.
Landmass wise.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're on the commercial side. It's getting better than it was. It's starting to get more businesses there. It's starting to kind of grow, and these new interchanges too are very helpful in like bringing in a lot of stuff like that. So it's
Well, what's going on south of Palm Bay now, where that new interchange is insane. They're building, hundreds and hundreds of homes down there, and at one time it was nothing but swamp. It's
swamp.
it
Cow
still
pasture,
seems like a
and
long way away,
It
but
does. I remember. I grew up on Beachside, and I remember the first time I went to Palm Bay. I went to work with my dad, and I was thinking, Dad, this drive is. It's a long drive, but it really wasn't. But it
isn't.
It seemed like so far.
Yeah,
away.
I live in Melbourne Beach, and I've timed the drive to I could be in my office, unless the traffic is horrendous coming over the causeway, I'd be in my office in 15, 18 minutes.
Yeah,
It's not that bad.
No, it's not.
So,
No, it's not too bad at all. It's not too bad at all.
As you've seen the community grow, John, like how have you seen the characteristics change? Like, what are you excited? What are you excited about for the future of Palm Bay? What are the problems? You know what I mean? Do you have a sense of what you'd like the future of it to be?
I think growth is inevitable, and growth is good. And I've definitely seen a significant amount of growth since I've been here, since 1978. But there's still a family-oriented, valued sense in this community that I hope is never lost. I spent a lot of time in Dade County. It's okay to go visit Miami, but I wouldn't want to live there. I say that all the time.
Right.
But it's different here. I raised 4 kids here. I'm fortunate enough that all of them have done well. They all went to college. 2 of them went to law school. Another one had his master's.
Oh wow!
And 2 of them are practicing law with me, which I would have never dreamed of. But and now at least 2 of them live in this community, and they're raising their families here. And it's just a nice place to live. And I hope that never changes. I hope that we can still keep that small town atmosphere, while at the same time we have to embrace growth, because it's good for the community that it grows. And we have a vibrant space program again here. We have a lot of startups, as you know, that are doing very well here. We have a lot of big companies like Harris Corporation and a number of others that a couple that I wish would do better, but
Different podcast, everyone. Different podcast.
But it's just a great place to live, I think, and a great place to raise a family, and I hope that never changes.
Yeah, to your point, one of the reasons, I would say it was the staple reason that we started Legacy Angel Network back in November of 2017. It's in the title. It's legacy. We wanted to create such a strong economic impact over the next 10, 15, 20 years in our community that this could be a place where our kids and our kids' and the kids' could raise their families, and so you do have. I agree. You have to embrace the growth, but keep the ethics and the morals and the culture and the things that we've tried to establish here. Keep those things present. Keep those things alive.
Right.
And I think it was even as we grow a little bit more, and it takes you 5 more minutes to get to work because of traffic. This community can still feel small. It can still feel like a great place to live and a great place to raise your family, and it is. I mean, it's again, I haven't been here for as long as you. I've been here for about 30 something years, and but I've watched it grow, but it still feels the same.
Yeah.
It's a very strange thing.
I find myself, on those rare occasions when I'm coming over the causeway and traffic is backed up to the bridge, I get irritated, and then I go, wait a minute, take a break here. It's okay. It's going to be an extra 5 minutes.
It's not Miami.
It's not Miami. It's not going to be an extra hour. It's going to be an extra 5 minutes.
Yep.
So.
Yep, it's true.
You do have to remind yourself of that every once in a while.
You absolutely do, because we've been spoiled. We really have. I think this community has in a large way. I feel like I've been spoiled by it, for sure. And but like my oldest son, he's a linguist in the Air Force. He couldn't wait to leave. He couldn't wait to get out of here, and he wanted to, his idea was, I want to be in Alaska one day, and He's been up in Washington D.C. area doing what he does now, and snow and everything else. He's over it. I think if he and his wife could move down to Florida, they wouldn't.
Well, my kids went through the same thing that I did. I mean, they wanted to go, and the fact that the two of them came back here, and first of all, the two of them went to law school, because I thought the last thing that my kids would ever want after watching me and what I went through, and the hours and the hard work and the times away from family, that they'd want to be in law school and then let alone come back here and practice law with their father. I never thought would happen.
Well, I want to brag on David for a second. Now, I can't. I'm sure all of your other kids are wonderful. I've met your Scott. I've met Scott a couple times. Super cool dude. I just don't know him like I know David. David and I were literally in elementary school together.
We grew up together.
Yeah, and David, Jeff Graff. There was a couple of kids in Mrs. Moon's class that you just knew were going to do something. You just knew it. I knew it. I looked at them and I was like, yeah, man, these guys are really smart. They're nice. It doesn't surprise me that he followed in your footsteps. It doesn't surprise me at all. He's a brilliant guy, but he's a highly ethical guy. But I remember he used to talk about you at school, which I always found fascinating.
I'm scared to know what he had to say.
It was always cool. But he would talk about his dad. So it was from this side of the sofa, it doesn't shock me at all that he went into that. You like your parents, kind of laid this really kind of groundwork for him, and you probably did not pressure him to do anything. He watched it and he decided, I'm gonna venture out. I'm gonna do. So he goes and he's worked his ass off. He's earned it. It's not like he was.
No, he's worked hard. I don't know how much time we have, but he finished law school, and he didn't want to come back to Brevard, but he wanted to leave he went to law school at St. Thomas in Miami. He didn't want to stay down there either. So he was interviewing with law firms in Orlando, and one of the firms he interviewed with was a defense firm that does the opposite of what I do. And I had to laugh at the time. I said, it doesn't shock me that David would go work for a law firm that does exactly opposite of what I do. But the senior partner of the firm and I were good friends. He's from Cuban background as well. Okay. So he called me one day. He goes, hey, John, his name's Raul. He goes, I'm interviewing your boy. I know what's going to happen. He says, I'm going to offer him a job because he comes from good genes. And I'm going to teach him, I'm going to train him, and he's going to leave me and go to work for you. And I said, Raul, there isn't a chance in hell that David's going to come work with me. I know my son. He's stubborn. He's hard-headed. He's not going to do it.
So is he anything like you?
Maybe.
There's a correlation there.
Yeah. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I guess. But he hired him, and David was with him, I don't know, about 3 years. And David calls me one day. He goes, "Hey, Dad, I need to talk to you." I said, "What's up?" He goes, "Can we meet?" I went, "Uh-oh." So I went over to Orlando, and he said, I want to come. I think I want to come work. I think I want to move back to Brevard." I said, "Awesome, man. I think it would be great." He was thinking about getting married. I said, "I think it would be great. What can I do to help you get a job?" And he goes, "No, I want to come work with you."
Whoa.
And I was like, "You want to come work with me?" And I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well, I've been interviewing with other lawyers, and every time I talk to somebody, they tell me that I'm insane if I don't go work with you."
Wow.
And I spent 2 months trying to talk him out of it.
Wow.
I said, because, I said, "Look, my relationship with you as my son is much more important than anything else. And the last thing I would want is for you to come work with me, and I tell you to do something or how to do something, and you and I get into an argument. That's not going to happen. If you come work for me, it's my way or the highway. And I don't want to be put in a position where that happens, because you're my son. It's not like I've had partners come and go, lawyers come and go, and you get over that, but you can't get over your son doing it." And his comeback was, "Does that mean I can't ever disagree with you?" I said, "No, you can disagree with me all you want, but in the end, your disagreement may not matter. It's going to have to be the way I say it is, because I'm the one that built this, and you're just going to have to accept that. Eventually, you'll get to the point where you can be the decision maker," which is where he's at now. He's making more of the decisions in the firm. But that's how it all started. And he came aboard, and we've never looked back. And then the same, it was like with Scott, it was almost the same thing again. Scott, he was my prodigy child. He graduated from Holy Trinity. He got offered an opportunity to go to Harvard. He went there to play football. He hurt himself, and after graduating from Harvard, he went to Florida State and got his MBA. Then he went to work for a Fortune 500 company in Jacksonville, was doing great. And he calls me one day, he says, "Dad, I'm going to go to law school." I go, "You got to be kidding me. You're making good money. You got a great job." He goes, "I want to go to law school." So he goes to law school, and we go through the same cycle with him. He wants to get a clerkship. He's going to law school at FIU in Miami, and he says, "I need some help clerking with a law firm." I got him a job with one of the best personal injury lawyers in Miami that I happen to know. And they offer him a job immediately. And I tell him, "Take it. Stay there. Take it. Work for that guy. He's awesome." He goes, "No, I want to come back and work with you and David." And I did the same thing. I spent months trying to talk him out of it. And now he's a partner, and the two of them are pretty much running the firm. I'm just along for the ride.
Well, two things. Two things. One, I would not want to run into Scott in a dark alley. If I was, no.
It's pretty tough.
He's not 6'9", but he's 6'4".
He's 6'4", but he give you a run for your money.
He commands presence. He was a lineman, so he's big.
Yeah. So that's the first thing. But the second thing, as a dad, I have 3 kids. As a dad, that's got to feel good that all these years later, your boys, they just want to come and be with Dad.
Yeah,
And
that's
pretty.
It's pretty awesome, and not something that I ever planned, imagined, thought would ever happen. That's cool. That was never even in the cards for me. And and I don't want. I'm talking about those two a lot. I have another son and a daughter that are phenomenal in their own rights, and my daughter has 3 beautiful children, and she lives in West Virginia. She actually lives right next door to her mother and helps her with the bed and breakfast that my ex-wife owns in West Virginia. And then my other son is in Raleigh-Durham, and he's married a wonderful girl, and he went to Auburn. Jamie, my daughter, went to Stetson and graduated. Brian went to Auburn.
Both awesome schools.
Yeah, and he's got a great job in Raleigh, Durham, and they're all coming in, by the way, for the JA event
Nice.
next weekend. So I'm really
Very cool.
excited.
I've never met your other two kids, so I hope I get to meet them.
Yeah, they'll be here.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Yeah, John's being honored at the Junior Achievement banquet. It's a Hall of Fame. He's been inducted into the JA Hall of Fame.
Congrats, man. Very
Yeah,
cool.
It's really
humbling
cool.
and very unexpected, and I've had to really wrap my hands around what all that means. But I'm pretty excited about it.
So Matt was mentioning your service to the community and everything, man. What did that development look like as far as how you decided on how your career would impact the people around you?
And on that note, too, do you guys want some more coffee?
It'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can keep answering those questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
you're good.
I will make some more coffee.
There you go. Thank you. It's too early for the real cocktail, huh?
Yeah, John, were there specific things that you identified in the community that you wanted to help with? Was that an organic development, or how do you decide to kind of
Yeah,
give back? Man?
I think it was. I think it was just developed. I don't know that I ever had my sights set on anything in particular. You know, I got very active in the bar association from an early age. I think, as in part and parcel because of the original lawyers I started with. Two of them have been president of the bar association, and you know they were very active in the legal community, and it just seemed like, well, that's what I need to do. You know, if I'm going to be successful and I want to go places in this town, I need to get active. I need to get on the board of directors of the bar. I need to move up along the line, a chain, and so that started. But you know, I reached a point in my career where everything I was doing was law related. And I really wanted to do some other things. And as an example, I had an opportunity to be a founding director of a bank. I thought that would be kind of interesting. So I did that. And then another startup bank came along, and I was asked to be on the board of directors of that. And I thought, well, I got some experience from the first time. Let me do it again. But, you know, I've been involved in so many organizations in the community in the 44 years I've been here. Some of them stand out. You know, I've been very active with Candlelighters just because I believe in the cause, and I think it's a great organization that helps families with probably the worst thing to go through, which is a child developing cancer.
Wow.
And so you know, I've been fairly active in that group. At one point in time, the Bar Association has something called the Bar Foundation, and what the Bar Foundation basically does is it tries to raise money and then make funds available to groups that need assistance. So I remember getting a phone call. It was one December, and the firm had a pretty good year that year, and the lawyer that called me says, "Hey, you know, would you consider making a substantial contribution to the Bar Foundation?" And I remember, because he tells this story all the time, I remember telling him, "You caught me on a good day," because it was the end of the year. The firm had a really good year. And I said to him, not only am I going to make a substantial contribution, but I want to create an endowment. And I went ahead and did that. I created the O. John Alpizar Endowment for the Brevard Bar Foundation. And I kind of seeded it with money and then got a bunch of other people to contribute to it. And the goal was to try to get to the point where we had enough money in the foundation that the foundation would be self-sufficient and we could use the interest and the growth from the foundation to donate. And we've accomplished that. We've raised enough money to make the foundation self-sufficient. And, you know, any group that needs funds can petition on a monthly basis to the Bar Foundation. I have nothing to do with the decision making. I don't listen to it. I'm not involved. And I did that by choice because I didn't want anyone to think that, you know, I had preferences on who got money. And so it's doing well, and that's been a big
incredible
thing to do.
big part of like your fulfillment in
Yeah.
your career.
Yeah.
And then just to touch again on, you know, your sons becoming part of the business. What was that dynamic like initially? I mean, it seems like you guys figured it out, right? But the family business dynamic, were there like hurdles there, and what?
It was really funny. David and I, as much as I was worried about what could happen, for the most part, I think David and I have been together now practicing law for about 18 years.
Wow.
And close to that, 17 maybe. It was a really smooth transition. We haven't really had any disagreements. We have, you always disagree about something, but it's been nothing major.
Yeah.
He became a partner, and then just last year, Scott became a partner, or an equity member, I guess you call it, and it's really been fairly smooth. I'm
Awesome, man.
shocked.
Well, it's probably just a lot of mutual respect on his part too. It's like just being in situations like that with your family. I don't know. It probably respect and understanding for each other and the weight of the situation kind of clicks in.
Yeah.
Is that, you feel it's that way?
Yeah, I think it is. I think.
You become like a team.
Yeah, we have been a team, and that I've always preached that in the firm, even when I had other lawyers and with clients. Is when you come to Alpizar Law, you're not coming there for one lawyer. You may come there because someone referred you to me or David or Scott, but it's a team approach, and I think that's the best way to represent clients. So that's what we try to do.
John, what do you do for fun, man? You out on the green or at the beach, or what's your
fun? I mean, there's nothing. There's no time for fun.
Is all of this fun too? Your career? Do you
No, I do a
enjoy
lot.
yourself?
I'm kidding. I do a lot of things for fun. I had a place in the Bahamas for years until Hurricane Dorian came along, and I love to fish. So my current wife and I both love boating and fishing, and we did a lot of that until the hurricane came along and had other ideas. But so I try to fish a lot. We're wine collectors.
Cool.
We collect wine.
Well, do you have any recommendations there, man? I mean, my palate's pretty unsophisticated. I'd love to know what I was doing, So what's that? Give us a crash course, John.
On
what
wine?
I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a cab lover.
Okay.
I actually like California cabs. There's so many. I mean, we could spend hours talking about wine.
We should have a wine podcast.
Yeah.
That might be the move.
Real education.
Absolutely.
I have to get my favorite wine. Oh God, I don't know that I have a favorite wine.
What's your daily go-to, or like a weekly go-to? Just your go-to.
Wait, daily? You think I drink every day?
I mean, we're drinking right now.
But isn't that that's something metabolically that's good for you, right? Like a glass of wine in the evening.
One glass of wine is good. 2 bottles a night, that's a different story. That's unfortunately what happens is you open a bottle and you're going to have a glass, and the next thing you know, you've had a bottle.
Yeah, that's true. It's very true.
But my wife and I drink a lot of cabs. We have several that we like. We discovered recently on a trip to Napa with some friends that are they're big wine snobs, more than I am. But I learn a lot from them.
That's great.
And we went to this small winery called Tres Perlas. In Spanish, it means 3 pearls. And it was an interesting experience because the founder of the winery was from Mexico. And when he came to Napa, he bought up this really nice. I mean, he worked in the fields, and it was a success story, which I love. And he started this winery, and they export most of their wine, and they only make a certain amount of wine. But as I recall the story, the founder before he came was a barber, and they have a particular wine called the Barber. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to get.
It's like the Pappy and the
I joined
wine
their
world.
club, and that's the only way that I can get it. I don't think you can find their stuff in a retail store. But I got an email last week. We were actually in Cancun last week, and I got this email from the Desperas people, and they said, your allocation's coming up. Would you like to add a bottle of the Barber? And I said, how many can I have? And he said, a maximum of 3. I said, well, take 3 of whatever you want out and put 3 of the Barbers in. That's one of my favorites. And that's only become recent. My go-to on a daily basis, we get a lot of wine from a winery called Hall, Hall. She is super well known in the wine community. It's not an inexpensive. It's not a $20 bottle of wine,
Right.
but we're in her club, and we get probably 2 or 3 cases of her wine a year.
Oh, nice.
So that's probably a go-to. We went to another winery when I was out there. I'm not going to be able to say this on the podcast.
No,
Do it, John.
because we can always edit it if it's terrible. So you're
It's
good.
there's a winery out there called Caldwell, and the founder of the winery, his name is John Caldwell. But John Caldwell's vocabulary includes the F word in everything he says. Everything he says. So when you're there, they refer to themselves as John fucking Caldwell. And so we went there, and I was like, oh my God, the glasses say
John fucking Caldwell.
John fucking Caldwell.
Amazing, man.
Everybody refers to him that way. And
I'm on the website right now looking for it.
yeah. And the story is phenomenal because they smuggled wine stock root from France in through Canada and brought it in. There was a terrible disease that wiped out a lot of the old vineyards. I forget what it's called. But they smuggled the stuff into California through Canada. And so a lot of their root stock is old, the real stuff.
Oh, wow.
That survived that disease. And I forget the numbers now, but they bought all this land for nothing. And they own all this acreage. And when we were out there, they told us what the acreage was worth now. And I mean, it's just millions and millions and millions of dollars. But that's a favorite of mine, John Caldwell.
Yeah.
John fucking Caldwell.
Yeah, John fucking Caldwell.
The website says one of the most diverse and influential vineyards in America with 28 grape varieties and a portfolio of 23 estate wines crafted by a smuggler, a Master Cooper. Is that what? Master Cooper, and one of the most talented winemakers of our time. That's wow.
I would be curious. This is just with all the spare time you have on your hands. Yeah, I would love to. I've never been out to Napa.
Oh, it's
My wife
wonderful.
and I love California. We've been up in when my son was in the linguist school. We were in Monterey. We always flew into San Francisco, went and did Big Sur, went and did like all those, out that way. But I've never been to Napa. We've always wanted to do a little wine tour out there. So I'd love to get your suggestions.
I can give you some great places to go to. For my wife's birthday 5 years ago, we rented a house and had all these friends come till we filled the house. And we did nothing but wine tours, and we had a chef come in and do a wine dinner one night. And
Nice.
I love Napa. It's
cool.
the weather's beautiful. If you like wine,
Yeah.
it's a great place to go.
That's cool.
I can give you some great
Yeah,
great places to go.
I'm definitely going to take you up on that. I'm just curious, and this is just more the goofy child in me, but what's one of the craziest stories that you're allowed to talk? I don't know if you're allowed to say, not allowed to say. I'm not an attorney, but what's one of the craziest stories, little things that's ever happened to you in your career that's just like, holy crap, I was out of left field. This is nuts. Do you have any like fun stories that were just like you've probably seen a lot of stuff.
Yeah, man.
I
Most
mean,
memorable.
I mean, some of your most memorable. It could be top 10, top 5, whatever. But like,
When you're asking me most memorable, you mean cases that I've handled or people I've
yeah, I
represented?
mean, yeah, cases, and it could be insane on the funny side. I mean, that's really what I was going for, but
Unfortunately, my memorable experiences with cases I've handled are tragic because
Okay.
they involve,
yeah,
terrible
Yeah.
situations
right.
with terrible things happening to people. The first big case, which is obviously memorable, the first big case that I handled very early in my career in the mid '80s involved a couple that was he had just retired, they had just retired, and they were visiting here and staying at a make sure that I'm not violating any confidentiality if I mention the name. Because a lot of these settlements have confidentiality provisions that I have to worry about. But anyway, they were staying at a local resort place over on the beach that was a big place for campers and people to come along. And they were walking in daylight along the edge of the road. They were staying there, and a young man in a backhoe backed over the two of them.
Oh my God.
And severely injured him, and unfortunately killed her. And I was really young when this case was referred to me by a local attorney, and I worked my tail off on that case, and ultimately was able to settle it. And I think the settlement amount was confidential, so I can't say, but it was a lot of money at the time. But I got very close to him because he lived in Detroit, and he was treating because he had a brain injury.
Oh my goodness.
And I had to go up there several times. So that was probably one of the most memorable because it was the first major settlement that I had. The second case that really jumps out at me was the first big trial that I had, and this jumps out at me for a couple of reasons. Hopefully I can tell you all of them because there's nothing confidential about this one. This case involved a fellow that was coming over the causeway, the Melbourne Causeway, driving a wrecker.
Which is
A wrecker, a tow truck.
oh, okay.
I call it a wrecker, tow truck.
Come on.
I'm not familiar with the
He's
lingo.
27.
Yeah, I'm
He's
sorry.
27.
Yeah, you know what a wrecker is.
I know
right?
what a wrecker
Okay, it's a tow truck.
I have gray hair. So
He's coming. Yeah, you do. He's coming across the causeway at night, and as he's heading west, and as he's coming up the causeway, he sees a bunch of smoke ahead of him, and immediately realizes that there's been an accident, and there's a car on its side at the top of the causeway. So he pulls his tow truck over, turns on the lights, runs over. There's still someone in the car, and it looks like the car may be getting ready to catch on fire because there's smoke coming from the engine compartment. So he goes back to his tow truck and gets a fire extinguisher, and he's hosing down the car with the fire extinguisher. Along comes someone else up the causeway, heading west, and decides not to stop. Just barrels into the smoke-filled area,
Oh my goodness.
hitting my client at the time, and the impact was so bad that they found one of his boots on the opposite side of the causeway.
Oh my God.
Just to give you some idea of the magnitude.
Wow.
And the person driving the car was under the influence and attempted to flee the scene on foot because he couldn't get anywhere. So legally, it presented some real interesting issues because the car that started all of this and had flipped over. Actually, I just got that wrong. The car that started it all was the fellow that was under the influence. And he's the one that got out of the car and tried to flee. The car that came up the causeway was driven by a lady who decided, for whatever reason, she didn't want to stop. I don't know if she was in a hurry or what was going on, but she's the one that hit my client. So we sued the original car that flipped, that started all of this, because that was really the car that caused all of this to start.
The chain reaction.
Right.
Started, yeah.
But we also sued the lady that came along that didn't have enough sense to stop when she saw flashing lights and smoke and whatever.
I know.
So the case went to trial. We couldn't settle. It so happened that the car that started all of this was a rental car. So there was unlimited insurance coverage available under that car. The lady that came up the causeway that actually hit my client only had a small $10,000 policy. So we ended up, filing suit against both because we couldn't settle. The lady that hit us, her insurance company wanted to pay their $10,000, but for a number of technical reasons, we couldn't accept that. So the case went to trial. It was my first major trial, and it ended up in a I don't know, 1.5 or almost $2 million verdict. So it was the first major verdict that I received. It was also in the 80s, late 80s.
Wow.
But a couple of funny things happened during that trial, which for me as a young lawyer were kind of frightening. The first thing that happened was that there was an insurance adjuster sitting in the audience of the trial as the trial was going on. And the trial was going pretty well, I thought. We got to Friday. We couldn't get the case finished, and it was going to go over to the next week. And we got to Friday, and the insurance adjuster grabs me. It was at the end of the day, and he said, "Mr. Alpizar, I'm so-and-so." I said, "Yeah, I know who you are." And he goes, "I've got the checkbook with me, and I'm prepared to write your client a check today. But if I don't write this check today, the checkbook's getting on an airplane with me today, and it's leaving, and it won't be back."
Look at that.
And I said, "Okay." As a lawyer, I have an obligation to.
Is that legal to approach you like that?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. There's no problem with an insurance adjuster approaching me. I probably couldn't approach him because if he's represented by counsel, I have to go through the lawyer. But obviously, he had gotten permission from his lawyer to talk to me. So he approaches me and he tells me, I said, "Well, I got to tell my client what the check is. So let's not talk in hypotheticals. What are you telling me?" He goes, "I'm ready to write a check for $500,000. I said, "Okay." So I went to my client and I did what I had to do, and he said, "No, I'm not going to accept it." I said, "You sure?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm positive. Let the jury decide." So I went back to the adjuster and I said, "Have a good trip. Take your checkbook with you. We're not going to take it." He kind of looked at me like, "Are you crazy?" I said, "My client's decided not to do it. Let's just wait and see what the jury does." And, as fate would have it, the verdict came back, 3 times what he had offered.
So he had a much bigger check.
Much bigger check. Yeah. He had to write in the end a much bigger check. Yeah, which he did. The other thing that happened during that case, which was funny, I was trying it at the Melbourne courthouse. You don't try cases there anymore. It was, back then in this community we had 3 courthouses: one in Melbourne, one in Rockledge, one in Titusville. They were all small, and you tried cases everywhere. Now everything's in Vieira and Titusville. But I had a doctor on the stand who was doing a phenomenal job. Just really good job describing the injuries, and it's someone that I know very well. And we're on a break, and we're standing outside, and the Melbourne courthouse was so small that they had to bring the jury out, and as the jury, they had to file past the lawyers, and we had to kind of back up against the wall and let them go by, and you can't talk to the jurors, and you can't have eye contact with them. You got to avoid every appearance of impropriety. But I'm standing against the wall, and the jurors are filing by me, and I hear the last juror say to the juror in front of him, "Boy, if I'm ever hurt, that's the guy I want taking care of me." So
Yes.
I knew we were in
Yes.
good shape. that was a fun experience.
Good giveaway.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, that's got to be really rewarding. I mean, I think that so whenever anyone has ever asked me, "Hey, man, I got this thing going on," and it relates to what you guys do, I always say, "Yeah, you need to look up Alpizar Law and stuff like that." But it's not just because of my connection with David; it's because of the reputation you guys have in the community. And but that's got to feel really good. When you're able to, you see an injustice, you see something bad happen to a person, and you're able to on the other side of that, bring them some comfort and bring them some help. And I mean, that's got to be a super rewarding thing.
It is. Our slogan has been, as you probably know, for years, Alpizar Law, we're here for you.
Yep.
And we believe that. We try to treat every client as family. We try to make every relationship personal, because we're representing people in their worst times, man. They're going to the death. They've lost a child. I'm handling a case, one of the cases of one of the two girls that was killed right here in Melbourne, just around the corner from where we're sitting. We spend time with people at their worst time, and one of the worst cases I remember handling involved a death on I-95. This I have to be very careful with, because there's lots of confidentiality associated with this, but it was a gentleman on his way to work, was rear-ended by a massive truck, and I can't even begin to tell you all the things that the trucking company and the truck driver had done wrong. And what made the case even worse is that this gentleman's son was following him when it happened. And so he essentially witnessed the whole thing and had to go and identify his dad.
Oh,
and he passed, and he left a wife and 3 children. And so, these are the kind of people that we're helping or trying to help at the worst time in their lives.
Yeah.
And so it is really gratifying when you can bring something like that to a conclusion. I don't think we probably are here to talk politics, but the last 2 days have been probably 2 of the worst days in my professional career, because we've had a major bill debated in the Senate of the state of Florida that is going to terribly impact victims of personal injury in the state of Florida. And it has passed. It passed yesterday by a majority vote, and it's going to the governor for signature. The bill is devastating, and it's sad to see how it's been ramrodded through the House and the Senate, essentially by the governor, and has now become law, and it's going to dramatically impact the rights of people in the state of Florida. So the climate's getting ready to change, and it's not going to benefit injured people. It's going to benefit corporate insurance companies, and that's what we face ourselves all the time, is battling these major interests. And obviously they have more money than we do,
Right.
but I think with all the bad stuff you hear about personal injury lawyers and advertisers and the advertising lawyers, and I'll be the first to agree that there's way too much of that going on, but the courts have ruled that lawyers can advertise and that it's a matter of free speech. But we as personal, and I say we, us on the personal injury side, we help to level the playing field.
Right.
And that's gratifying for me to be able to do. Yeah. And it always has been, and we hope to continue to do it, even with the recent terrible changes that are going to take place.
Yeah, and it is a shame that passed. I heard about that going on. David and I had a chat about it a couple weeks ago. That all that was kind of coming down. It's one thing about your profession. It's the same thing in my profession. It's the same thing. Our professions are made up of people. And you have people who are ethical, people that do it the right way, and people that don't. The people that don't often give the others a bad rap even before. But what I can say, John, both from your reputation, from all who know you, and all the people in this community, as well as what I've noticed over the years, that's not who John Alpizar is, and it's certainly not who Alpizar Law is. So I want to thank you for just the way that you served our community over and over and over again in 100 different ways.
Oh, I appreciate that.
It's a real honor to know you, man.
Appreciate that, man.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Likewise.
Yeah, thank you. Connor, do you have any more questions for this fine young gentleman?
Yeah, just to land the plane, man. What is your do you feel yourself like winding down as your sons take over the legacy that you built, or what's your next phase look like? What are you excited about for the future of Alpizar Law, man?
My sons refer to me and my status currently as being on senior status. Yeah, I think that I'm not retired, and I don't know that I'll ever be retired, but I am on senior status. I am doing less. I'm handpicking what I do, and I still have a lot of attorneys that refer cases to me and really want me to handle them. And while Scott and David, and we have another lawyer with us, by the way, that she's going to be phenomenal. Is phenomenal, Alexa. And Alexa is the daughter of Frank Filiberto. I don't know if you know Frank.
Yeah.
He's a local physician.
Yeah.
He and I have been friends for years, and Alexa's up and coming, and she's going to do super. And the three of them can handle anything. I'm not worried about them. I'm slowing down a little bit. I'm trying to enjoy life more. Unfortunately, I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to see friends battling illnesses, and have a good friend right now that we've been buddies since I got here to this community that is in hospice care right now, and another lawyer buddy that was about my age, maybe a couple of years older than me, that just passed this weekend. So
I'm sorry.
You're hearing, unfortunately, my parents told me that as you get older, part of the bad part of getting old is watching your friends die.
Yeah.
And but that's life. It's what happens. So I'm trying to enjoy life while I'm still in good health and doing more things, and that's the plan for right now.
Yeah, man.
Any parting advice for so our typical listeners and people that they're doing their own ventures, they're kind of going for it in their own life. Any parting advice for the people that are watching this?
Yeah, I say this all the time, and I used to tell my kids, and I still do every chance I get, life is but a journey, enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
But I think your listeners, if they're going into whatever they're going into, that they need to find something they're really passionate about, and they need to work their asses off at doing what they love to do. And I've told lawyer after lawyer that's been through our law firm the same thing is, don't do what you're doing based on financial reward. Do what you're doing because it means something, because you love doing it, and because you can do it well.
Yeah.
And if you do it well, the financial rewards are going to come. You can't be motivated by money, and whatever you do, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, an Indian chief, you need to be motivated by loving what you do, doing the best job you can, outworking the other side, which is what I've always done.
Yeah.
For years, it was funny. I would tell people I flew under the radar forever, and I loved it. People underestimated me, but I outworked them. I outprepared them, and when I had to put on the show in the courtroom, I was more prepared, and I did a better job, and we got better results. And I think all that hard work pays off. But I think you have to be motivated for the right reasons, and you have to do something you love, and then work hard at it. I mean, that's the best advice I could give.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I mean, it's, if people can separate in their head, not making it about the thing and the reward, but making it about the people, the reward comes.
Yeah, whatever
Yeah,
you do.
I love
mean, it affects everything, I think.
Well, John, thank you, man. Cheers to you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's
cheers
been
to
a
that, man.
pleasure. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you, guys.
Cheers.
John Alpizar, everybody.